The aberrant signaling in non-small cell lung cancer is a common pathway for those that have activated oncogenic drivers. So for instance, both EGFR mutant as well as ALK and ROS1 rearranged tumors will signal through the MAP kinase pathway. The part that's somewhat unusual about the BRAF mutants is that the BRAF gene is a serine threonine kinase instead of a receptor tyrosine kinase, which is what's present for the other three that I've talked about. And this serine threonine kinase, you can directly inhibit the activity by treating it with dabrafenib. The activation of the BRAF pathway also increases the signaling of MEK, which is downstream in the MAP kinase pathway. And you can develop a drug, or you can use a drug called trametinib or another MEK kinase inhibitor that can also inhibit that pathway. So you can attack the pathway at two different points and have a synergistic effect on the anti-tumor activity.
Over the past several years, we've understood that there are a number of different pathways that have molecular alterations that lead to a kind of an oncogenic driver situation. The RAS-RAF-MEK kinase pathway is one of them. And so we understand that, particularly in the instance of RAF mutations, particularly BRAF, and others, that these can be activating mutation. They can constitutively activate this pathway. It becomes an oncogenic driver, and therefore it becomes a target for specific targeted agents that will inhibit this particular pathway. And I think we've seen a number of examples, not only BRAF, but EGFR mutations, ALK translocations, ROS1, and others, in which you have a molecular alteration that kind of turns the light switch on, if you will, the light switch of driving the growth of the cancer, and that by specific targeted agents inhibiting these kinases that you can have much more dramatic results than we've typically seen with what I would call non-specific chemotherapy.
Well, targeting MAP kinase and other pathways in lung cancer is important. And the reason why you would want to target multiple steps in the same pathway is cancers are smart. So let's say you target PI3 kinase or MEK, MAP kinase, or one of the other pathways. You can have redundancy in these pathways. You can have backup mechanisms. You can have resistance. So in many cases now we're looking at ways to target cancers with MEK inhibitors and with PI3 kinase inhibitors. In some cases, we're using them together to try to target pathways at multiple steps because we want to get them before they lead to that final point, which is to activate growth of cells.
The way BRAF and MEK inhibitors work synergistically is that the BRAF inhibitors have a direct effect on the activated portion of the BRAF serine threonine kinase, which then in turn activates MEK, which is in the MAP kinase pathway. And the MEK inhibitor has the capability of shutting off that pathway. So the two can act synergistically by inhibiting both BRAF as well as MEK and have a greater effect on downregulating the MAP kinase pathway and therefore inhibiting the growth of the cancer.